Hi, marketers. This is Dots, and welcome to the Marketing Leadership Podcast. With me here is Isaiah Studivent, CEO of Evron. We will discuss the importance of digital marketing transformation to revenue engines. Are you guys ready? This particular episode is not for the faint-hearted. So let's get it. Isaiah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on the podcast. Looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
absolutely, absolutely. And when I connect your name with what you do, I am not surprised. I'm really, really proud of what you do. And whilst me knowing you, which is not surprising, do you want to tell our listeners about yourself, your background, your role, and how you've come to become where you are right now?
Yeah, I'll try and do a 60-second. It's been a long journey, but yeah, I'm Isaiah Studivent, the CEO of Evron. We are a revenue marketing agency, and we work with growth stage B2B SaaS companies. We've created a process that we use called revenue engineering. It's how we scale companies from 1 million to 10 million and beyond in ARR. How we got started in all this? Started off doing graphic design in my dad's church, and I kind of caught the bug to be an entrepreneur. At that time, before business was on my mind, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. Got
Oh,
into business through a mentor, and I just fell in love with it and made the shift to business. Taught myself marketing, advertising, demand gen. So we started off as a social media marketing agency, the typical ones you see on Instagram, YouTube, pushing saying, "Hey, you should run a Facebook ad." It's very typical, common advice that doesn't really help anybody.
yeah. Tell me about it. The garage ad.
Yeah, started in September 3rd, 2020. Was doing okay, very early. Got smacked in the face, I wanna say, a year into it. We didn't know anything about B2B or SaaS, so we weren't in that space at this point, but, we did have a client who, let us know that, he said that he could get better returns from having a billboard than having us, as his agency, and so we were, like,
What?
focusing on the wrong thing. 'Cause when you're, focusing on social media, it's kinda like, "Hey, let's get impressions, engagement,
Mm, mm,
comments, likes, and all this good stuff," and that's
mm,
fine and dandy, but I think in that it was it was, uh, it was a good thing that we learned. It was the most critical moments that we pivoted to focusing on how do we make companies revenue? How do we generate revenue? And what are the indicators that actually, lead to revenue? So we had to go back
mm.
to, you know, marketing 101, studying the sales funnel. Then we learned layered demand gen. Then we layered all these fancy terms on top of it. And now we're in a good spot. How we got into the, B2B SaaS was we had the opportunity to work with a $26 million Series B company called Home 365. Um, and it was an amazing experience. And we felt like, yeah, SaaS is probably the industry for us. And we've just been running ever since.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. That's great. And what you're doing is like next generation Apple headset type thing. And there are a lot of R's in there. Revenue ops, revenue engineering, revenue R&D, revenue OS. I can go on and on and on and on. And the question my listeners want to ask here is, are we still talking marketing? Do you want to explain how all this new thinking and why we should be thinking in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. It is all marketing. Generally speaking, we're observing the shift in go to market roles. We see go to market roles shifting to the right, and what I mean by that is marketing is being more accountable to sales ROI. Sales is not selling as they used to because modern buyers have more information than ever before, so they don't necessarily require a salesperson to just go through a discovery demo and all this other stuff. They kind of need the salesperson to guide them and be more of the customer success rep. So sales is falling into the CS role, and then CS is falling into a more brand PR play because they're going to be responsible for how the company is being presented and the reputation because they have to take care of the current customers. But when it comes to revenue, it's absolutely on marketing. Marketing to be just being held more accountable. In some companies, that marketing's investment takes up 12 to 15% of the total company's revenue, And if we're just relying on qualified or just leads in general, like lead volume, not even qualified leads, if we're just relying on marketing to produce leads, that's not going to recover the investment that the company has put into marketing.
Yeah.
So everything, when you speak revenue, you have to speak marketing, because marketing is the first layer of offense that companies use to, drive revenue from the company.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So I completely agree with that whole mindset of, I guess it's quality over quantity, but that's the most extremely simple version of saying it. Um, it's really about, and I think, like we were saying off the mic, it's going to go beyond B2B. This is going to go into B2C and really go deep down, all industries, all sectors, with regards to how we consider marketing goals and marketing strategies and how that leads to revenue. And I typically would say this, that the forgotten stone is now the head of the corner. You know, brand demand generation, or this quest for quality, didn't start today, really. It used to happen long back then, when guys like Robert Rose, who I've also spoken to, wrote a book on killer marketing in the early to late 2010s, on why people need to focus on this for profitable campaigns or profitable initiatives. So I really agree with you for that. And also, something else that is going on here is marketers have become more sophisticated, right? Customer and business demands have differed. There is a lot of power to the customers these days, whether it's B2B, B2C, small, medium, or large. So I would like to explore some strategic details with you, as we now dive into the topic proper. Um, and I would like to start with customer research. When developing strategy, there is always the need for customer research. And let's say I give you a startup that has zero history. They are ready to roll, they've got everything, but they have zero history with marketing, or maybe a little to no history with marketing. How do you advise they conduct their customer research, especially the ones that has to do with the jobs to be done? Havas calls it that, but it's also called customer needs, and how that connects to, a typical B2B decision-making process for that specific brand. What are some of the customer research methods that you use to find what you need to kick off revenue marketing?
Yeah, so that kind of goes into trying to uncover the ICP. I mean, if you get the ICP wrong, you get everything wrong in your company. So I can speak from three categories. So number one, competitors. I think if you don't have any, data, or you don't have a lot of data to use, competitors are a great place to start. I think especially in the nuances, if you're launching in a mature category, I think a lot of the proof of the research can be done is because you can see that there are players in that market, and if there are successful companies in that category that you're in, then they kind of validate a lot of it, and you just have to go behind and do your research on what they're doing and see if you can extrapolate some of their customer data. Um, then the main one that I would suggest, and that we are fond of, that a lot of companies actually don't do because they can become a little lazy sometimes, but actually talking to the customers themselves. Um, I see some good campaigns out there for, giving out an Amazon gift card for a 30-minute interview to talk to a customer. I think it's worth it, and the return on investment you'll see in the long run from doing the hard work up front to really understand the your customers' needs, pain points in their day-to-days and their workflows is critical. And then if you're trying to figure out, and this goes specifically to marketing, if you're trying to figure out the channel, you first have to figure out where they're getting their information. Like, where are they getting fed the information to do better in their role? If you're B2B, it's most likely LinkedIn, but there are also other nuances. Slack is growing in prominence.
Yeah.
Like communities like Rep Genius are really exploding on Slack. Think of about 38,000 revenue professionals, from RevOps to demand gen. They're all in that group. Yeah, I think those are the main three. Is just making sure you understand where they're getting the information, because that'll probably plug you into what channel to experiment on first. Looking at your competitors, especially if you're in the mature market and trying to get access to some of their numbers and data on how the market is trending. And then just actually talking to the customers themselves. Like, that's the best data you can get, is actually, sitting down 10, 20 customers is a great start, and really asking the real questions that really matter, that will help you both develop your product, but also your messaging.
including criticisms.
Yes, criticisms is probably more important than the praise that you'll hear from
Yeah.
anybody. Well, so yeah, the criticisms are probably where the most insights are lying.
Yeah. If you're listening, you got that. I know it's easier said than done, but as I already said, it's a lot of work that needs to be done upfront. So let's get that, and we'll see how the success starts. Now, another aspect to revenue engines is when you're communicating, your brand purpose is very important. Whether it's brand recall or, product differentiation, or however you want to look at that, brand purpose is key. But if you want to connect that to digital marketing transformation, then we are looking at the concept of creative innovation and how marketers can use that to drive or start to drive the kind of results that they want to drive. I'm a very good stalker of my guests, and I've been stalking you for a while and saw your model of dynamic messaging to dynamic markets. So, and I feel it's probably, one of the best answers to, or the best way to look at creative innovation. And I'm wondering if you could explain more what that means and how that can help revenue engines at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes the most sense right now. Uh, the saying goes, and you can correct me, a lack of resources kind of drives the most innovation and creativity, and that's what a lot of B2B marketers are experiencing right now, with budgets being reduced. And it's also up to them to understand.
Necessity is the mother of innovation, I think is what they said.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
And so how we can apply that to the market is, marketers at B2B companies have to understand more than ever how the workflow, how the day-to-days are shifting in their ICP's lives, and understanding that organic demand is down. Chris Walker said it on our podcast. He says down to less than 1% of market demand. And so the way to pivot is dynamic right now. So we're in it where people aren't, buying as frequently. So how do you position yourself in your messaging to win in the end? And it's going to be a longer term play. And I'm not saying long term, it's going to take 5 years, but let's say we start to see the economy go in a positive direction in the next 2 quarters. Whoever positions themselves as the ones that were able to adapt and be flexible and become more of a guide, because that's what we're doing. So we're actually we're practicing what we preach. So we're not really in this mode. We're in, how do we show up for our market right now? So that way, when they come up, when they survive it, first of all, that's probably what they're going to attribute a lot of their survival to, is who helped us the most, who gave us the most value to stay steady. And we're trying to position ourselves as that. And so when it comes back up to, B2B, the B2B industry buying more, we want to be front and center to capture that demand that we created in a market like that. So when we say dynamic messaging, dynamic markets equal dynamic messaging, you just have to be able to adjust how you position your company, your messaging, with the workflows and the jobs to be done in the everyday, day-to-day operations that happens in your ideal customer's life.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And I mean, what I'll add to that is, we marketers, we are very fond of extreme fixes. So when we are using this dynamic messaging to dynamic markets, we need to cut through the noise and focus on the segments of our markets that will bring, the 80-20 rule, right? The small segment of our markets that brings the biggest impact, and then create a brand messaging plan or brand storytelling plan that we can use to attack that. Before now, Isaiah, we used to have all kinds of models, or I guess ways of looking at business models from a cost of goods to margins, and me, a good number of them have been very and are still important. But back then they were used heavily in the marketing space. But now in the human to human system, I interviewed Brian Kramer in the past. We are looking at a customer centric or a user centric system whereby there's this new business model of monetizing or subsidizing audiences, whether from a potential point of view or from an actual point of view. So my question is, how do we typically do that? And maybe a side question is, how careful should we get when it comes to this level of monetization of especially in the B2B space of audiences, because we know that audiences are the most valuable currency right now.
Yeah, I think B2B marketers should be careful, but I'll put this nuance in it. I think there's nothing wrong with monetizing audiences. I think it's a great thing to do. I think the fear for a lot of organizations who want to do the monetization play of their audiences is they don't have the confidence that what the value that they're bringing, they can sustain it over a long period of time. Who is a very prominent example of being able to monetize an audience, and he's monetized me as well, as Dave Gerhardt's Exit 5 community in that audience.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah,
Trying to get him as well.
But the value that's in that community is it just grows. It's not anything that gets stale. Doesn't feel like there's good moments and bad moments. It's a very consistent experience that continues to grow as the community grows, and I think that speaks a lot to how Dave built it. He's creating the next generation of marketers, and as we grow in knowledge, we start to create that urgency or that more for new marketers to come in. And I think it's worth monetizing. I think the value that's being given to an audience is worth monetizing, but you have to be able to, in a sense, quantify if they're getting value. So you have to treat those audiences like you would if it was a product, and see how they retain, see how they engage. But yeah, being careful is just understanding the level of value that they're getting, and if they're experiencing value at all. And if not, do not monetize it. Then you need to add more value or see where the real value lies. And then you can start to look at how you can monetize an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's getting as close to reality as possible, so that we don't deceive ourselves and get back to a new realm of vanity metrics. Well, yeah, that's a great perspective there, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, so far so good with this episode. Our listeners are pumped. They are ready to make money. They are ready to go to market. But as I typically would do with my clients or at my work, first we need to do some technical house cleaning. And a few things I would like to explore with you, Isaiah. The first thing is behavioral science. Still works today. Some people also call it the psychology of influence or persuasion. I've read a book in the past from Caldini regarding this and how businesses use this even in the B2B space. But when it comes to B2B SaaS online presence or presences or platforms, I don't want to stick to websites here, but whether it's website, whether it's app, whether it's email, whether it's social, whatever platform that is, and the one that kinds of where the customer that you are talking to is connected to, what are some of the ingredients or features that you look out for, especially those kind of features that have the ability to create demand, the kinds that engage the audience, and the ones that captures the right type of demand? I know lead gen and lead capture, they are the whipping boys right now, but even in demand generation, there is some sort of capture going on. So could you tell us some of the things that, if there's any, marketing technologists listening here that we need to pay a focus on when it comes to like B2B SaaS and how they can improve their customer experiences?
Yeah, for sure. We just kind of launched a partnership with Walnut. So Walnut would be one. So if you can get, build out your tech stack, and make it as seamless and as frictionless as possible before they contact sales or book a demo. I forget exactly who it was, but we booked a demo with the particular company, and they had their product demo on the website. They had their product demo after you booked the demo. And it's nuances like that that really get people prepared and make it easier for your sales team. Like, it's marketing's job to make the sale easier for sales, and one of the ways to
Mm-hmm.
do is with what you're talking about, the behavioral psychology and
Economics. Yeah.
yeah, and kind of prepping them for that call. So, having a technology that it allows you to embed your product demos on your website and just, record product demos overall and share it on social, that automatically gives you an advantage over having to wait until to actually get somebody on the phone. They kind of already have a good sense for your product. It kind of qualifies them even more. That's a piece of technology. Another one would be using an intent-based platform, something like 6sense or Clearbit or Lead Feed or
Okay.
something, or and this goes kind of more for B2B companies who sell more enterprise.
Yeah.
Seeing if you can break into those buying communities that exist within the B2B space, and seeing if you can capture some of those positive signals. It'll allow for a program to run longer and fully, you know, see the results and outcomes that the company wants. So, like, let's say a marketing leader wanted to have an 8-month program, ABM program.
Yeah.
Add something like 6sense to the tech stack allows it to show after a quarter, it shows to the board like, hey, we haven't hit our revenue target, but these are the positive signals that we're seeing from our target accounts that were set out after that we are starting to move them slowly towards having interest and slowly moving closer towards the pipeline. Because without
Mm-hmm.
that, having some sort of positive signals and early signals, a lot of the programs that would have really had the results the company wants get cut short because you can't prove that. Um, And just overall, just making sure that you have your content in order. So whether that be you constantly pushing it to social and showing up on podcasts, those are just a couple of different things you can have to kind of prep people before they get to that place of demand capture.
Yeah. That makes sense. Earlier before now, you had spoken about teams. You had sort of highlighted on that. I would like us to um, also look at another area, and that's like content ideas. Especially, at the end of the day, all this involves content, some level of content. You have to tell the story. You have to speak to your customers. We are also all very aware that the role of the CMO has changed over time. Now we're having chief customer officers, chief commercial officers. So literally we are building commercial teams instead of marketing teams. And that's because, and this also ties into your purpose, um, looking at the entire revenue generation, retention, and expansion ecosystem. So there's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen. But like I said again, there is a lot of content that need to happen. So my question is, from the campaign managements that you guys do for businesses, could you share a couple of nice B2B campaign ideas that, from a marketing perspective, that assist other members of the commercial space, especially when it comes to two parts of the ecosystem, the retention and the expansion? I personally feel a lot has been said about acquisition. So, given the limited time, I don't want to drum too much on that. But many people just leave that retention and even leave expansion altogether. So, if you've got, I don't know if you've got some ideas or campaign ideas or campaign concepts that have worked for you when you're dealing with your customers, especially for those who are trying to expand revenue and expand lifetime value, or even the retention bit.
Yeah, every campaign is just about getting customers involved, right? And so
Yeah.
something that, and this is something we're working on implementing for ourselves as well. But one of the ways to get your customers involved and for you to use that customer to get more customers and expand it and even retain them is to
Yeah.
because we're going to start a series with our customers not a full podcast, but some
Okay.
video series where we're asking and talking to our ideal customers about different things, whether it be about the product or about the challenge, but it makes them feel involved. It makes them feel like they're part of a tribe. And
Mhm.
then using that content to promote it and push it to new channels to their audience, like just like how I'm on here now with you, and you want to grow it and push it to more people in the SaaS space or the marketing space to get on your podcast. I push it to my network. It's just a network effect. So it's really
Yeah.
just how do you get them involved? How do you not just get testimonials, but how do you get them on camera? How can you sit down with them and be in person and create actual experience that you can share with others and entice them to want to be a part of that experience. And the more experiences you can create with your existing customers, the more likely they are to retain. And then you being able to share those experiences through paid social like LinkedIn, and people from their network see it. Like, let's say, Chris Walker, he shares it with his network. Like, yeah, I just had a great podcast with Dots. Now, every, B2B marketer is going to want to be on your podcast. And that's another way to create demand. And for and that goes to retention and expansion is just, getting, the champion or even some of the influencers in the buying community at a company involved, and it will kind of entice them to be influencers to whatever other department you may want to expand to or upsell or cross sell to. Um, so yeah, that's just all I see it, just getting them involved in some content and then just sharing that content with their network and your network and kind of creating a network effect.
Yeah, I know that SaaS they've mastered the system of growing from the inside out. And I try to sometimes simplify things, but that's sort of what I've rounded up all that you said. And enterprise do a very bad job at this. And my gospel, every influencer has got their gospel. One of my gospels is, having enterprises learn the systems and involve the customers as much as possible. I do podcast marketing on the day to day, and I've got a very big client that does this, and they have this podcast that is just focused on the clients and how they see the network effect. I mean, I know network effect is a technological term, but I can use it in marketing. Network effect of being the customer, having the customers being the advocate, right? Some people have talked about the pump and funnel system of the marketing funnel, whereby you have all the awareness, blah, 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 until you get to advocacy. And then advocacy comes in and pumps revenue back into awareness. So if you're listening, it's probably a low hanging fruit, to be honest. And also, again, to what Isaiah said, the involvement of stakeholders at every step of the journey. Employee engagement is also something that is very, very important. And then when it comes to your online presence, you also want to get as much involvement and as possible. And authenticity is very important. Like authenticity just is also includes the challenges that you face while trying to solve challenges for the market. The world has gotten sophisticated, customers have gotten sophisticated, but authenticity is also a great level of influence when it comes to that. Now, a couple of other questions, Isaiah, and we are still on the subject of revenue engines and how digital marketing transformation helps with that. We won't finish this episode without talking about marketing intelligence and the transformation. Oh yeah, and the transformation around that. And it's a bit of a hard question I'm about to ask because I've spoken to a few people before about it. And my biggest problem with intelligence is integration, especially when you are looking at multi-channel marketing ecosystems and all the, I guess, animosity, silent or cold animosity that goes on with people not wanting to integrate. And I'm wondering if from your own experience working with your customers, you've managed to help them to figure out some way to track, single customer view. Because what you guys do with pipelines and all that, it's a life cycle marketing thing. So how do you guys work on the integrations, the setup, the tracking, And what has been in terms of what has been the challenge in trying to influence management to take this change management? Because we know that change is not easy. You need to build a new culture. People don't like getting away from things they are used to or stuff like that. But what do you think about that? And what are some of those ideas that you think, business intelligence or data-driven marketers like us can use to create a more efficient and a simpler but a much spread out digital tracking ecosystem?
Yeah, I think before companies even consider adding any more intelligence on top of what they have, you have tracking first, and big proponent of HubSpot, getting everything tracking into something like HubSpot, getting one central location to
Me
get all your
too.
into, whether that be from Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever other channels you have that you can, pour data into. Getting it integrated into a little central, dashboard like what HubSpot offers, and then trying to enrich the data and make sure that, it's not siloed, make sure there's no duplicates, and just trying to make sure it's as updated and validated as possible. And then and to lay it on top of that, once you kind of gotten the data taken care of, just making it accessible to everybody. Because not everybody has a single source of truth. I think that's where a lot of the disconnect happens between data-driven marketers, or not even marketers, and the board or whoever another decision maker is on trying to invest in more technology to gain more visibility. I think that they can make a great nit, or can make a great argument if they, because the whole point of RevOps is to gain more visibility, and so you can have more confidence in your data to make, data driven decisions on where to invest your money, on where you can recover the most investment from. And I think
Mhm.
if marketers can first sort out existing data and show that, adding an additional tool, something like maybe hockey stack, um, then you can, absolutely convince, the board or the CEO that that's worth something investing into, and trying to get to go from a multi-channel to, get a single customer view.
Yeah, absolutely. Google calls it the multi-moment. Um, uh, in one of your podcasts, you mentioned something about how people structure data these days that is not meant to be hogwash, and how you think people should structure data. And by data, I mean their sales pipeline on the B2B side of things. Um, and that sort of makes sense, but I would like, the opportunity to get your thoughts, sort of for the sake of our listeners, to share what are some of those ideas when you mean restructuring sales pipelines. And there's a lot of analysis paralysis, and people spray and pray, and all these marketing mistakes that people still make nowadays, and that also affects the way they look at pipelines. Some B2B businesses don't even have pipelines. Well, let's say some even do. The pipeline is not well run. The models they use for lead scoring is fraudulent. What How they value opportunities versus leads and so on is not as great. So, what are some of the best practices on how to structure something that I stand for, which is a transparent sales funnel, a transparent pipeline, is a technology backed pipeline, so that when I'm running all this life cycle marketing, is plugging in the right way. And even if it's not successful, I know how to course correct because I'm starting on a good footing.
Yeah, I think step one is defining your entry and exit criteria into your actual pipeline stages. I think a lot of
Okay.
sales teams don't agree on what each stage means, and what's the criteria to be called in this stage, and what's the criteria to exit this stage and go into the next. I think that's step number one, is just defining that and making everybody agree on that.
Mhm.
Secondly, I would say, if you have to kind of sort your pipeline, especially if you're selling to SMB, middle market, and enterprise, or into multiple verticals. You need to set by because you don't want to mesh enterprise and SMB. They're two different buying processes. It's two different sales processes. The customer experience, the buying experience is different. It takes
The pricing even.
It's very different. The ACV is different. The win rate is different, and you don't want to treat an enterprise account like an SMB account, or over expend resources into an SMB account that might not require because it's in the same pipeline. But to be able to split your pipeline in HubSpot is very easy. You can create multiple pipelines in HubSpot and multiple deals. And figuring out when to engage them based on some of that leading indicators, because you have to figure out where the low and high intent exists. So it could be low intent where they're only in problem education, or they can be very high intent where they're in solution aware. So just kind of figuring out, first of all, where your stages are, and then what does each stage mean as far as the buying journey, how warm they are, because that's when you when marketing should try and help sales on the timing on when to engage them so they can expend the least amount of resources possible. In my opinion, that's where a lot of the customer acquisition costs get driven up, is because of a premature handoff that happens before there's real intent shown. And now sales has to expend extra resources on calls and emails and content and sending them different resources to try and warm them up. But if the timing would have been set up properly on when to engage an actual lead that is warm, then a lot of the customer acquisition costs will get reduced.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're listening, I think that's a great way to look at it. It's probably extra work, but I think it's going to make your life easier, because what we are trying to do is build a sustainable system for revenue engines. Think of an engine as your car. You want your car to work as long as you want. So in order to do that, you need to build the right foundation. You need to get into as much complexity as is needed, like in a car with maybe thousands of parts. Not until you do that, you might be struggling with what Howard Tieski called irrelevance. It's important to do all these digital transformation tactics that we've discussed here to make sure that you do not lose to competition and you can thrive as a business, get as much commercial value as you want. Isaiah, this has been a great learning experience for me. Of course, the discussion continues in terms of revenue engineering and maybe us getting badges. I am a revenue engineer. There were many things I was thinking about preparing for this episode, but it's pretty interesting. I'm well on board with it myself, and like I said, I don't know if you heard this from me first. It's not going to stop at B2B. It's going to spread all around the entire scope of corporates globally, because it goes back to the core of marketing, which is human to human connections. Where can our brands find you, if they need help developing these demand gen models and helping them to structure their business in a way that they can get sustainable ARR?
Yeah, LinkedIn is number one. You can find me, Isaiah Studivent, on LinkedIn, or check out our website if you want more information about us, Evron.io, Evron.io. Those are the two main places to find us, figure out what we do, and just reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all for today, guys. Please see more episodes at dotslovesmarketing.com. Subscribe to the podcast Marketing Leadership on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Till next episode, connect the dots.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Dots Loves Marketing. There will be links to any resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.